Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Pardon me real quick as I take my meds. It is time for meds. If you have not taken yours or you forgot to today, make sure that you take them, even if they're just vitamins. I take a vitamin C every night. Sorry for the loud things. I take my allergy medicine every night, and I take my mental health medicines because we don't want to have sad girl times. If I could get my mood stabilizer out, that'd be great. I actually need to go up tomorrow and pick up my new prescriptions because my main no sad times girl pill is out. So I have to skip that tonight, unfortunately. So maybe slight sad times, but at least the mood stabilizer will be there. And it's not like a life or death thing if I miss it. But take your meds if you haven't. If you need to, make sure to take them. Also, drink your dang water, because I've been much better about that last couple days. Drink your dang water, even if it's got like a liquid IV or whatever the crap, thing that you use. I have a liquid IV in mine because it's hot, it's summertime, and especially if you're on antidepressants like myself, you got to drink your water because that summer heat dehydrates you even faster when you're on certain antidepressants. So be careful. Take your meds. My meds and emotional support water bottles at home. Oh no, not at home. Adri, I'm sorry. Adri, since you're here, I do want to say we will be doing sprints today. We'll do sprints after we talk about The Witcher. But I have a feeling that we've already covered some of the stuff with The Witcher. For some reason, I was looking back through my notes and I was like, I swear I must have talked about Baptism of Fire last time. I'm fairly certain I did because for some reason, all of my notes, I was like, this looks familiar. This looks familiar. Like, I feel like I've talked about these things. So can someone in chat that was here for the last live show, the last Witcher live show, can y'all remind me if I did talk about Baptism of Fire? Because I feel like I'm losing it. And if we only have to talk about one book, that's one less thing to do today, and then we can get to sprints. So let me know if anybody remembers. But anyway, so typically what we do with the live shows that I do for The Witcher Readalong, we'll talk about the book a little bit, just talk about basically the plot of it. Forewarning those of you that have not read the Witcher series as of yet, we are on the, now we are at the penultimate book for the month of July. But we've been working through the entire series of The Witcher this year in the year 2024. This live show is going to be going over maybe a little bit of Baptism of Fire, which is book 2, I think. No, book 3. And then the Tower of Swallows, which is book 4. Now, we may be talking more about the Tower of Swallows because, again, like I said, I probably went over a lot of this stuff for Baptism of Fire in the last live show we did. I can't quite remember, so y'all are going to have to help me with that. But at the very least, what we're going to do is do the Tower of the Swallows discussion, and basically just talking about the book, how we felt about it, the plot of the book, how things have kind of progressed since the other books. Sorry, give me 1 second. My aunt is messaging me. She's trying to get me something off of my wish list. Sorry, my aunt's trying to get me something off my wish list because my birthday's coming up. For those of you that don't know, my birthday's on Monday, so I'm super excited. So she's trying to, more so I think, get me something for my classroom, like my future classroom, since I'll be doing teaching here sometime in the next couple years. Or just basically like classroom supply, stuff like that I can bulk up on before I actually start teaching. So she's probably setting something from that, which will be partially for my birthday, but but yeah, my birthday's on Monday. I'm going to be turning 27, which is weird. I don't think I like it very much, but it is what it is. I hate the fact that I'm getting closer to 30. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. But yeah, so it is what it is. But okay, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the Tower of the Swallow. So I'll quickly run over like basically what I remember us talking about with Baptism of Fire to start with, which really was essentially everyone trying to figure out where the hell Ciri went, because at the end of the Time of Contempt, there's this big battle that goes on and she disappears through this portal and ends up in the middle of nowhere and has to traverse this entire way, gets captured, and ends up becoming a part of this pack called the Rats. And she goes by the name of Falca. And I think that's all in the Time of Contempt, mostly. But we'll go over quickly, basically, the events of Baptism of Fire, just on the off chance that I didn't talk about it. I don't know. Wasn't at the last live, but I scrubbed through and you have the Goodreads pulled up for Baptism of Fire. Okay, so I didn't talk about it. I just pulled up the Goodreads. Okay, good to know. Thank you, Adri. I appreciate you. Yay! My birthday present's in the mail. Awesome. I'm excited. I have a feeling I kind of know what you did because of what you messaged me about previously. And if it's what I'm thinking, it is going to be amazing. I mean, obviously, anything that you make, I absolutely adore. Like, I still use this huge thing, which you guys can barely see. Okay, there you go. You can see it says Gabby shit on it. Adri at Adriology made this for me. It's a huge pencil and pen pouch. And you could probably use it for like a book sleeve of some kind. But yeah, I use this like all the time. Like, it is never, ever, 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 ever going away. Oh, there are several things in that box. Oh no. Oh dear. Oh dear. I'm sure I'm going to love all of it. I always love all the stuff that you get me, Adri, because you know me so very well. But thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get into Baptism of Fire then, because it looks like we may have not touched on it as of yet, which is fine. It's fine. We will continue with what we were planning on doing. So basically, we pick up the story of Baptism of Fire in this place of Brokillion. We know that Geralt specifically, in the Time of Contempt, he gets injured really, really badly. And in Brokillion, he is basically trying to leave as quickly as possible. He doesn't care if he's healed or not. He's just trying to go after Ciri. And essentially there he meets a few different types of people. One of which is named Milva, who is a hunter. She's an archer. She's super, super powerful in terms of her skills. And she ends up deciding to head out toward Nilfgaard with Geralt, because Geralt believes that Ciri is possibly somewhere in Nilfgaard. There were reports that, a girl was taken to the Nilfgaardian Emperor and was looking to get married to him. And everyone was saying that it was Ciri, but we, as the reader, knew that that was not Ciri. It was someone that was in place of Ciri to kind of draw people out to Nilfgaard and try to essentially like distract people from, the actual placement of where Ciri really is. Which Ciri now, like I said, as we know, she is with the rats. She's kind of traversing the plains as she will, all things like that. And then essentially, in their journeys with Dandelion, who is also there with them, Milva and Geralt, they come across a character named the Black Rider, who the Black Rider is the same individual who has been plaguing Ciri's dreams. We find that he is the man who essentially saved Ciri from a burning city that was happening, took her out of there. But this man also is someone that Ciri is terrified of, because for some reason, when she was in and out of consciousness at that time, she became terrified of this man for whatever reason. And essentially, he, though, is the one that saved her and got her out of this burning city before Geralt had officially first come back to find her, and then them go on this journey together. So, essentially from there, let me see, look at my notes again. So yeah, they meet Milva. She wants to follow Geralt and go on this journey. All of these boys, though, it's a boys' club. She's kind of like, I'm going to be a part of this no matter what, though. Like, you can't stop me. They also then meet up with a group of dwarves who we've met before. They are basically shepherding a lot of refugee women and children. At one point, these guys help them. And then they also come across, like I said, the Black Rider, who is named Kahir. And what happens is when they first meet him, he is being transported as a prisoner by some hawkers. and Geralt decides to spare his life. But Geralt wants nothing to do with this guy. He wants absolutely nothing to do with him because he thinks he's not a good guy because of the things that Ciri has said about him. But Cahir is very persistent and wants to shadow Geralt and the group. And Milva is actually the one who kind of like persuades Geralt into being, hey, he might actually be of some importance to us. Let's bring him along. Then to round out our group, we meet another character who is someone I was really interested in reading about because he kind of warps this idea of what this type of creature would be in this type of world. And that is Rhaegus. Rhaegus is a vampire. And they call him this monster, but he's like a decently pretty cool guy. Like, he's actually a pretty decent person. He's incredibly smart. He is very medicinal. He knows a lot of the lore and a lot of the history that's going around in this world. And you know, he's really just someone where it's kind of an uncanny individual that you just didn't expect to really be super helpful, and they are. His medical skills are above and beyond what they need when they're going on this journey, and so Rhaegus basically tags along. And Dandelion, there's a lot of back and forth with him and Dandelion about the fact of like what exactly is a vampire and what do all the stories say versus what Rhaegus experiences, things like that. And it's really fascinating because the way in which the vampire is set up in the world of The Witcher is very different in a lot of ways compared to how we see vampires in traditional media. And it's just really fascinating. If you read anything about Rhaegus, what were some of the things that you really liked? I just personally loved the banter that there was between Rhaegus and Dandelion. I thought it absolutely hilarious. I found it to be probably one of the most fun parts of that entire book because I will say Baptism of Fire was not my favorite. There's going to be kind of a running theme going on with these two books for me personally in terms of my thoughts on them. But this one, that was probably my favorite part, was when Rhaegus first came in and there was all that banter with him and Dandelion. So then as time goes on, they start traveling further eastward into Nilfgaard. And they're basically caught up in this battle for the bridge on the Yaruga, which is the river. It's this big river that basically it splits up like some of the map of this world, basically. And essentially there's a war going on between a couple different factions. And they are specifically in what is known as Queen Maeve's, they basically sway the war into Queen Maeve's favor. Like, they basically fight on the side of Queen Maeve, who, basically is the queen of the where the Yaruga lies. And it's funny because Geralt mentions the fact that he never actually was from Rivia. He just kind of found the name Geralt of Rivia to be really catchy. And so he's like, I just started calling myself that. But when the battle is over and Geralt, goes up to Queen Maeve and all these things, she actually knights him as Geralt of Rivia, which makes him, it's a namesake now, which is funny because I never realized that had Geralt not said he was not from Rivia and he just called himself that because it was catchy when it came to, coming up with his name and stuff like that. If he would never have said that, I would have assumed that he was still from Rivia, which many of the people that read this book probably thought as well. So it's just really cool to see how he officially becomes knighted as Geralt of Rivia, when most of his life as a Witcher, he kind of was just like, I'm just going by this because it sounded catchy. It's like, he gave himself a nickname, basically, because nobody else was able to give him a nickname, and I thought that was really funny. Now, let's jump over to Ciri, because the most of the story that we see is with Geralt, do not get me wrong, but we do have parts with Ciri where Ciri is basically going on these adventures with the rats. She's pretty much settled herself into this group. They're a bunch of young rebels, vigilantes, if you will, and she's become known as Falca, which we learn at the end of the Time of Contempt. Falca was like a sorceress of sorts, and like a pretty badass one and pretty evil one to some extent. And she basically starts killing people on a regular basis, Ciri does. But she forms a very strong bond with one of the rats named Missile. And essentially, Ciri, we see, becomes fascinated and enamored and obsessed with killing, which compared to how we've seen this character previously has not necessarily been the case. We used to have this very small girl who was a little bit afraid of everything, was not really super strong. Now she's gone literally to practically hell and back, and is now at a point where she is becoming a killer, and very likely a warrior that is one to be not to be trifled with, basically. Now, the last thing that I really want to talk about with this, before I get into my thoughts on Baptism of Fire in particular, there is a little bit to do with Yennefer. There's not really a lot of this book that goes into the whole story of Yennefer, but there is a little bit of background that is brought up about the Lodge of Sorceresses, which is a place that we have seen in this story. Yennefer had brought Ciri to this area to really get her in her sorcerer era, basically, if you will. And we find out that Francesca Findabair, who is one of the sorceresses, captured and compressed Yennefer into a jade figurine. So we all were wondering what happened to Yennefer with the Battle of Thanaid and all that. Well, she basically was put into a jade figurine, and the Lodge is really pressing this importance on finding Ciri to use her in their politics and basically using magic. And essentially, they force Yennefer to join their group. And then there is one Nilfgaardian sorceress named Fringilla. I think that's how you pronounce their name. Fringilla ends up helping Yennefer escape from one of the Lodge readings to go rescue Ciri. So essentially, we find out, like I said, she was captured during the battle at Thanaid Island. She was put in this jade figurine, being forced to join the group that there is with the Lodge of Sorceresses. But one of the sorceresses from Nilfgaard, funny enough, considering how most of this book we're being told Nilfgaardians are evil, that they are awful, awful people, we find another Nilfgaardian person who decides to help out our cast of characters in some way. So Yennefer escapes and is off to basically find Ciri. So that pretty much is all in terms of the main plot that I wanted to talk about with this. In terms of my overall thoughts on this installment in the series in particular, I found this to be kind of that middle of the road book. Like, it wasn't something where I found there was a lot of action. Like, there were definitely some action scenes within this that I really enjoyed, but I did find myself feeling very bored throughout a lot of this. Like, there was a lot of background stuff being divulged, and there wasn't really, I felt like, a lot of high points. I felt like we had a lot of lower stakes points for a while. I mean, like I said, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of points where there were battles, and like at the Battle of Yaruga, all the fight scenes that Ciri was in, the escape of Yennefer, all that stuff. But there was a lot of really lull points that I think really made this hard for me to enjoy as much as I've enjoyed the rest of the books. But that's also, something that tends to happen towards the middle of a series. There's a lot of stuff that gets divulged, especially the closer and closer you get from the middle to the end. There's things that have to be kind of built up to help set up the climax of the series, if you will. And so I found that this was just kind of unfortunately dealing with that kind of middle book syndrome. And I will say, like I said, again, the whole involvement of Rhaegus was really cool. I did also like how we got to learn more about Cahir, and as the Black Rider, who he was and what his purpose was, and kind of see that in multiple different respects over the course of this series, we have again seen these Nilfgaardian characters who we've been led to believe by the politics that are involved in this world that these people are bad. But just like with any group of people, while there might be a lot of bad people within one certain group, there are the outliers within that. And so we've seen that with not only Cahir, but then the sorceress that helps Yennefer escape. We've seen that with them as well. We've also seen it with just random Nilfgaardian people who have escaped from Nilfgaard because they don't like what's going on. The whole thing with the dwarves, I'm pretty sure it was a lot of the refugees, if I'm not mistaken, were Nilfgaardian. And so it's really interesting to see that the further we get into the series, we're also having Geralt and the other characters start to see how not everyone that's from Nilfgaard is necessarily against what they're going for. They're not necessarily people that are looking to fight them. They are people that are looking to just survive and looking for just some kind of peace. And they're actually running away from their homes to find that peace, even if it means being looked at differently because they are Nilfgaardian and because people will recognize them as Nilfgaardian. They're trying to find some semblance of peace despite that. So it was just really interesting to see that aspect get played, I think, a lot more into this book than I've seen in the other books. And that was just one thing that I definitely thought was like a pro within this one. But overall, my rating of it was basically like a 3-star. It was fine. It wasn't as enticing, like I said, as the other books in this series as it was for me. But it was okay. It was all right. It was pretty solid. You know, it is what it is. So with that, I'm gonna take a quick sippy. Any OG Graveyard Girl fans out there might remember that one. She still kind of does that, I think, because she's still around. She's not necessarily like disappeared. She's just not as relevant anymore, I guess. And she's definitely one of those OG YouTubers where like only the OG YouTube community would remember her, really. I used to be obsessed with her back in the day, but not so much anymore. All right. So, with that, we are going to now get into the book that we read in June. So we read Baptism of Fire in May, finished that. Now we move into the Tower of the Swallow, or the Tower of Swallows. It goes by a couple different names depending on the placement. In the UK, it's normally called the Tower of the Swallow. In the US, it's normally called the Tower of Swallows. Either way is fine. But yeah, let's get into that one because this is the book that I found probably to be the most boring, quote unquote. And I'll get into that in a minute because there's just a lot of lore that's dumped into this and a lot of like somebody telling somebody else their story and not really seeing it for yourself kind of thing that made this a little difficult. So let me explain. So we open on the book where there's this old man who we learn is named Visigota. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He finds this injured girl in the swamp surrounding his home. Like, there's this like little area that he walks around and he finds this girl, brings her back to his little hovel and takes care of her and basically revives her. And that girl is Ciri. And we find out that essentially there was a lot of things that happened to Ciri by the end of Baptism of Fire that we didn't get to really see. And so the story is pretty much the majority of it learning about what happened to Ciri to get her to that point, while then also jumping back and forth between things with Geralt and things with Yennefer, things like that. But let's go into specifically more about Geralt first. So essentially, Geralt is on his way to find a set of druids. So in the course of Baptism of Fire, there is this point where Rhaegus and Dandelion, Milva, Geralt, and Cahir, they decide that they're going to specifically go and find this group of druids who may know where Ciri is. And so they're basically on this way, but someone is really determined that they should not find her. And so like a lot of Geralt's story is having to fight against whatever force this is, whatever person this is, that does not want them to find Ciri. And so then eventually they meet this elf named Avalok, I think is their name, Avalok, who tells them about a prophecy that is associated and connected with her, with Ciri. And they need to find some druids who will reportedly know where she is. And at some point, Yennefer meets up with them and all these things. They end up meeting up. And Yennefer is then trying to find Vilgefort's hiding place. Now, Vilgefort's, if I remember correctly, he's a sorcerer and he's a bad guy. He's like one of our many bad guys that is involved in this. And Yennefer at some point decides to go and find them, but it's not super easy. It's not something where she can just go to one place and there he is. It's like there's a really specific place that he's hiding and she has to find it. So then if we go back to Ciri, where the main story takes place, where she is telling the story of how she got from where she was in the baptism, at the end of baptism of fire, all the way to where she ended up at Visigota's home. Now, Visigota is this old philosopher. He lives in what's called the Paraplut Swamp, which is basically like a really remote area. Not many people live there. Not many people really know where this is. And so when he finds Ciri injured, he takes her in, takes care of her until she's ready to continue her journey. And what we find out is that unfortunately, all of her friends in the rats were killed by this man named Leo Bonhart. And Leo Bonhart is a man who is essentially he's like one of the worst characters we come across. He's a bounty hunter. He's a professional soldier, but he does a lot of bad things to Ciri. Like, this is the book that has a lot of trigger warnings because of the amount of things that he does to Ciri and her friends. And this is one of those stories where there's so much involved with it that, you know, at some point, Ciri kind of just waits for death. She just expects to die at the hands of this man. And Leo, he, for some reason, whether he knows who she is or not, kills everybody but her. And essentially, she tells the story to Visigota about her escape from him, from how he captured them, killed her friends, how she then finds a way to escape him, but she becomes gravely injured in the process of that. And when she decides that she's going to leave Visigota, she's fully convinced because she is not hurt otherwise. She does not know anything else. She's fully convinced that Geralt and Yennefer are both dead. She does not know anything else. She's never heard anything about anybody else, and anything that she has heard has been rumor. So she's pretty much under the assumption that the people that she considered family are, besides the rats, are completely dead, and she's on her own. But basically, based on that assumption, she leaves Visigota to go find Tor Ziriel. Now, if I refer to my notes, Tor Ziriel is a tower. It's called the Tower of the Swallow. This is a place where there's a lot of... So the tower in which that Ciri was basically kicked out of to go into the desert was Torlara on Thanaid Island. This tower is very similar to that tower, where there's a lot of magic involved. There is a lot of things going on with it. And essentially we'll also have a portal that will very likely take Ciri to where she needs to be. Maybe take her back to where she was supposed to be. Like, if, you know, Torlara sent her to one area, maybe the Tower of the Swallow or Tor Ziriel will take her back to that same area that she was in previously. They call it, you know, kind of this tower that's called the Gate of the Worlds, or it's called the Threshold of Time. The towers themselves in this world are very, very magical. They are very important in terms of like the time bending and the magic that there is in this world. It's very unstable. It's very confusing, you know, things like that. And the magic that's associated with these towers was thought to be lost for a long, long time, because when you approach these towers, specifically the Tower of the Swallow too, it looks like it's just a bunch of ruins. And many people, even like scholars in this world, believe it to be myth. But Ciri obviously doesn't believe that. So she's going to see if she can try to find this tower in order to basically send her back to where she was planning on being, and maybe even go off to Nilfgaard. Who knows? But that's basically where we end off with the Tower of the Swallow. So my thoughts on this one, the wrap-up for this one was a lot faster, because really there wasn't a lot in terms of like different plot points like there was in Baptism of Fire. a lot of the story was really just Ciri telling her story of how she was captured by Leo and tortured and, beaten and all these different things, and then her eventual escape, and then her retelling the story to Visigothia and then going on her way. With little bits here and there from Geralt and Yennefer and all these things. Now, the reason I said earlier that this book was kind of the most quote-unquote boring for me was because I felt like that a lot of the story really dragged on. There was a point where when Ciri was recollecting basically what happened to her, I just felt like it was more telling than showing. Like, I kind of wished that this was more like a normal kind of story where we would just be following the characters as they're going about their things, like with what we saw of Geralt and what we saw of Yennefer in Ciri's perspective. But we didn't get that. We got her basically retelling from her perspective everything that happened, which fair enough, right? But it felt less like somebody showing me what happened and more of somebody just telling me what happened. And this, I think, made it more boring for me in terms of like the way that the story was developed. Not to say that anything regarding the abuse that she went through or anything was boring by any means. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, like, even the parts where like we were just kind of seeing how things were developing, the abuse and torture completely aside, the way in which the story was being told was very kind of monotone, it felt like, and it didn't feel like that there was really any, not necessity, it just didn't feel as enticing, I guess, as I've seen other kinds of stories in this regard be told. And so I feel like it would have been better for this to be more of like having the character go through these things and having us see these things, as opposed to her telling another character what happened and learning about the story in that regard. I think that there's just a little bit of a missed opportunity within all of that. I feel like that there's a lot of missed opportunity with the visual aspect of imagining this playing out that I wish would have, had the story would have had. So I did end up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars again, like I did with Baptism of Fire. That does not discount the abuse and the trigger warnings that are associated with this book, because there's a lot. And I think that this is where you start to see, like, we kind of seen from the beginning of the story, it's not necessarily a very, happy-go-lucky light fantasy. This is a very dark, very twisted kind of fantasy world. It's much tamer than other grimdark fantasies, do not get me wrong. But in this regard, with this one character, Leo, we see just how dark and depraved some of these people in this world can be, especially those that kill for a living and, are hired to kill. It was nauseating sometimes to listen to the audiobook, specifically to listen to the things that were being told about what was happening to her in the course of her imprisonment. It was heartbreaking, but it was definitely something where it is not for the faint of heart. If you are someone who gets really triggered by things that are very abuse related, I would say this is probably not the book for you if you've not read it. But if you have, I hope that you took care of yourself when it came to those triggers, because it was hard for me, and I'm not someone who much anymore is heavily triggered by anything. There's definitely some things that will take me aback or things that will make me feel a little bit uneasy, but for the most part, triggered is not a word I typically get when I read certain things, and this one was pretty close. Like, it was pretty hard hitting at some points. Hello, Scarlett, welcome. So with that, that's basically all of my thoughts on The Tower of the Swallow. In general, for both of these books, these were like basically middle book syndrome for me. We had 2 books here that just were not as enticing as the rest of the books that were in the series, and that's okay. I still enjoyed them enough to continue the series, and I'm definitely interested to see, especially since now Ciri is on her own, and we are under the assumption that Geralt and Yennefer are dead, to her in particular, but we as the reader know that they are not. I'm curious to see how the Lady of the Lake is going to go, because that is the penultimate book. We have 2 more books in this series left, And we are getting really close to, I think, what would be the climax. Like, here's the thing, though. The Lady of the Lake technically is the last book in the series, okay? In the chronology of the story, it is the last book in the series. So we're getting to the climax, right? But then there's another book, Season of Storms, that is essentially like another type of prequel, but you're supposed to read it after the events of The Lady of the Lake, which is why I decided to read it at the end of the series. So really, so in reality, we've read the penultimate book. We are at the penultimate book, though, of this reading series, if that makes sense. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the Goodreads look, the synopsis for The Lady of the Lake before we get into sprints. Yum. All right, so let me just go ahead and there we go. Okay, so here we have the synopsis for The Lady of the Lake, book 5 of The Witcher. So, after walking through the portal in the Tower of Swallows while narrowly escaping death, Ciri finds herself in a completely different world, an elven world. She is trapped with no way out. Time does not seem to exist, and there are no obvious borders or portals to cross back into her home world, which we kind of assumed with the way that Tor Zariel was described would basically be. Excuse me, but this is Ciri, the child of prophecy, and she will not be defeated. She knows she must escape to finally rejoin the Witcher, Geralt, and his companions, and also to try to conquer her worst nightmare. Leo Bonhart, the man who chased, wounded, and tortured Ciri, is still on her trail, and the world is still at war. Oh boy, so we're definitely not getting away from him. Yeah, they were definitely more trauma porn. I wouldn't go say so far as trauma porn, like the most extreme of it, but they were definitely more trauma heavy. Like they were definitely more trauma heavy than I've ever seen in these books, and it was a little jarring. But what it looks like in The Lady of the Lake, the final book in the official series, but the penultimate book for our read-along, we are getting to a point where things are going to start colliding. And now we're getting into the wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff, as my Doctor Who fans may know. So there's going to be a lot of time bending stuff that I'm expecting to happen. And I'm nervous about the fact that we're still going to be chased by this Leo Bonhart guy. Like, I don't like him. I want him to go away. I hope he does get killed at some point because he's an evil, evil man. And I just would really like to be able to see Geralt and Yennefer, like almost, like what do they call it? That Cinderella moment of sorts, maybe, I think, where like they at the last minute come in and they save the day. Like, I would love to see that. Like, if there's like this big battle at the end of the story, I would love to see Geralt and Yennefer come in like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, where he brings in all the people from Gondor, or not Gondor, the other village. What is it called? I don't remember. But I would love to see a scene like that where there's like Gandalf on the white horse, Gandalf the White coming in to save the day, and all these things. Like, that would be absolutely amazing to see. So let's hope, for those of us that are reading this for the first time, that happens. But yeah, so that's basically it in terms of my thoughts on both Baptism of Fire and the Tower of the Swallows. So here is where I would like to hear your guys' thoughts. If you've read these books yourself, what did you rate them? I feel, like I said, both were about a 3-star for me. I am hoping that The Lady of the Lake will be better, but this is the biggest book out of the main series. This is the chunkiest book. This one's closing in, if not over 500 pages. So this one's gonna be a lot. But what were your guys' thoughts on Baptism of Fire and the Tower of the Swallows if you read it? I'd love to know. I hope you like Lady of the Lake. I enjoyed it more, but the ending of everything left me unsatisfied. Okay. I have a distinct feeling, based on the way that the synopsis was in Goodreads, where it's like, but the world is still at war. I have a distinct feeling there probably will be an unresolved ending of sorts, but that's just me being, I think, maybe a little more, maybe pessimistic is the right word, or like unoptimistic, I guess, because it's not really, I don't want to really be pessimistic, but I'm definitely not, I won't be surprised, I guess is what I'll say. I won't be surprised if the ending is a little more unresolved than what most people would probably think would be good for the series. But if you have any thoughts, please feel free to let me know what you guys thought about with Baptism of Fire and the Tower of the Swallows. I think they were still fine books. I definitely would feel like I would have to reread them to really get more from them. Like, this is obviously a series where, like, I've enjoyed it so much so far that I would definitely reread this series in the future. So this would be one where, like, a series where I'd go back through the books and I'd annotate stuff like that, and I do more digging into the wikis and all that stuff regarding the series, especially like looking more at the games. Excuse me. Like, especially The Witcher 3, I know plays a lot into especially what we kind of see as like Geralt and all of that, and some of his story with Ciri and with Yennefer and all that. So I would be interested in definitely delving more into this world in the future. Gate Baptism of Fire, 4 stars. Okay, cool. So you liked it definitely more than I did. That's good. I'm happy that you enjoyed it more. But yeah, so I mean, that's really it. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna go grab my book. Where is it? Oh, it's in my backpack still. It's in my backpack in the living room. I'm not gonna worry about it right this minute. But yeah, so The Lady of the Lake, we are going to be reading that in the month of July. That is our July read. And it is our second to last book in the series. So we're down to 2 books. Tower of Swallows, 2 stars. Yeah, I feel that. I gave it 3 stars, and that probably was a little generous, but I didn't hate it. I just felt like it got a little bit lackluster at times, and I felt like I just slogged through this book more than I probably needed to. It just wasn't as entertaining, I guess. And that's, again, not discounting any of the abuse, the trauma that's involved with it. Just storyline wise, it just didn't hit for me in the same way that like the other books in the series did. But Lady of the Lake, we will be going over. The live show will be in August. So we've got about 4 weeks to the next live show, which will be August 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, we'll be going through that book. And then in September is when we're going to have our last live show for this series with reading Season of Storms. So July's book is Lady of the Lake. August book is Season of Storms. So be prepared for those of you that are reading this along with me. Rereading the games made a lot of the politics more clear for me. Oh, okay, good. So yeah, it would be good to probably reread and go through more of the other media associated with it. I'm also interested in reading the graphic novels because I know that the comics and graphic novels are pretty decent. So I'll have to see if I can figure out how to get my hands on those because I know that there's quite a few at my local library. So maybe once I finish the series, I'll go through and do more of a deep dive within The Witcher later. The game's given more satisfying conclusion to me. Oh, that's good. I never finished The Witcher. I tried playing with The Witcher 3 by myself one time and I got really frustrated and I rage quit. And I haven't picked it up since, but it's one of my husband's favorite games, which is why like I wanted to read this series because it is from one of his favorite games. And I heard it was like one of like the staple fantasies that a lot of people should read. And I've enjoyed it so much that I definitely feel like I would like to either watch gameplay of it from in the future or try again to replay it myself. Because I'm not very good at video games, especially like games where like you're fighting things. Like I love watching my husband play video games that involve fighting things. Like he's playing Fallout 4 right now. Oh, I forgot the Netflix series. I also want to watch the Netflix series. I meant to think about that. Yeah. TV show is helpful since you can see the different mages and kings, so it's easier to tell them apart. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because this in Game of Thrones, I remember, was like really difficult for me to differentiate between all the lords and stuff. But then I watched like a couple episodes of the first season of Game of Thrones, and I was like, oh, that's who that is. I remember them. That makes more sense. I haven't played the Witcher games. I watch gameplay sometimes. Yeah, I probably will watch more gameplay videos. Because like I prefer that honestly to playing video games more than likely. Mostly because I just get so frustrated so quickly. to video games. And so this would be a series where like I would probably watch gameplay footage of The Witcher 3 specifically. Because I don't know much about the other, if they're like the other two games or if anything good, you know. It's just I prefer watching my husband play video games or other people playing video games because I just get so annoyed so very quickly, unless it's a game I've played so many times before. Like the Fable games, I'll play those any day of the week. Like those are my favorite games, and which makes me so excited for the new Fable game that they just released the trailer for a couple weeks ago. Oh my god, I can't wait. I've been waiting that game for fucking ever, it feels like. Like Fable 3 came out and I played it when I was like probably 16 or 17 the first time. I've been waiting over 10 years for this new Fable game, and I'm so freaking excited. But yeah, so anyway, that's completely going away from what we were doing. So for now, those of you that are joining us, we are just finishing up with the live show part of this video for the or the live show part of this show for the two Witcher books that I had meant to do a live show for previously and just didn't. But now we're going to go ahead and get into sprints. So those of you that are here for sprints, we're going to get into that here real quick. So I got a couple things going on. But I need to go through a few things first, especially for anyone that is new here and is not familiar with how I do things. I hear Witcher 2 is not as good as Witcher 3, but decent. Okay, cool. I'll have to definitely look into them in the future. Okay, so for those of you that are new, first of all, let me know that you're here. Say hello. Tell me how you're doing and what books you're planning on reading or what you're planning on working on. I have got plenty of books here that I'm going to be in the middle of because I've got things for Summerween. If you are doing that readathon, I've got my own books that I'm going to be working on. I'll also be probably picking up The Lady of the Lake at some point tonight. We'll see how the day plays out. But yeah, so how I do sprints here, which if you don't know what a reading sprint is basically a set amount of time where we sit and we read. If you're familiar, in schools, they do like drop everything and read time for like 20 minutes every day. That's basically what we do, except it goes from anywhere from 10 minutes to about an hour 20 for us. Now, the way in which I do this is I will roll a d20, and every number on the d20 roll, 1 to 20, gets multiplied by 5. And depending on what we roll, that's going to indicate the amount of time that we do our sprint for. Now, there's a couple caveats to that. The first of which is we never do 5-minute sprints. That's not a thing. If we ever roll a 1, we do not do a 5-minute sprint. We instead basically will take, if we roll a natural 1, we'll take the next number we roll and either double it or halve it, depending on whether it's a number between 2 and 10 or 11 to 20. Now, what we're going to do with a natural 20 is we automatically, no matter what number we get, we have it. So natural 20, we just completely have the next number we roll. Now, what we also make sure to do, caveat number 2, for the first sprint, we never do more than 30 minutes because I like to give everybody a warm-up when it comes to sprints. So everybody gets at least it's between 10 to 30 minutes of a warm-up, which for some people, they really like the shorter sprints, other people not so much. But don't worry, we're going to have plenty of opportunities for different types of, sprints, short and long. So there'll be plenty to choose from. Now, I also have a wheel set up where I have all of my current reads on there. And each sprint we do, I'm going to switch and spin the wheel to see which book I'm going to read for that sprint. The last time I did this, I was stuck with one book for half the sprints. And then I got stuck with the other book I was currently reading at the time with half the sprints. Now there's more like 7 or 8 that I'm in the middle of. So there's plenty more to choose from. But I have been getting the same books mostly for the last couple of days when I've been doing this. So who knows? Okay, so without further ado, let me go ahead and get my screen sharing. So we're going to start with our D20 roll. And let's see what we end up getting. Hello? Thank you. Okay, 4. Perfect. A nice 20-minute sprint to start us off. That is exactly what I like to see. And now, let's see which book I'm going to read for the next 20 minutes. You can see all of the books that I've got currently going on right there on the side. And okay, it's gonna tip over, which is perfect. But we're gonna go with my summer ween book for right now that I'm currently in the middle of, which is actually a book called D for Daisy. It is an indie author book. It's a mystery thriller placed during World War II, and it involves a character who is blind, which is very interesting. So let me go ahead and get a 20-minute timer here. Just give me 1 second. I found these really, really cute ones that are like lo-fi based that are absolutely adorable. Like this one for 20 minutes has like a little mushroom, just so stinking cute. I just love it. So I hope you guys like these timers too, because we're going to be using them a lot on this channel from now on because they're just so adorable. I just love them. But yeah, so let me go ahead and share my screen again. And we're going to do 20 minutes of reading. So hope everybody enjoys, and I will see you guys in 20 minutes. Okay, guys, so that was 20 minutes. That was our warm-up sprint. How did you guys do? I got through about 10 pages of D for Daisy. This is by, who was it by? I forget. It is by Nick Aaron. Yes, Nick Aaron. It is the first book in the Blind Sleuth Mysteries. And it's just over 200 pages, but it is a little on the slow side. Little on the slow side. I don't know if I like it so much. I'm waiting to get to like 25% of it before I decide to DNF it. Like if I'm going to. Because like the mystery itself is pretty good, but right now we're kind of in like a flashback set of like a flashback chapter where it's like delving into the relationship between the main character, Daisy, and her husband, like how they got together, because the murder victim supposedly is her husband. And so it's like delving into their relationship, which I'm not necessarily like a fan of, but it is what it is. But how'd you guys do? What did you end up reading? And let me see. I'm going to also get ready to share my screen for our next sprint. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and roll for our next sprint. It's a 7. Okay, so that's going to be a 35-minute sprint. And now let's go ahead and spin to see what my next read is going to be. Oh, ninth house. Okay, so this is the buddy for this month with my mom and my sister. Depending on how this month goes, we might be doing both ninth house and Hellbent. But I am currently 114 pages into this, so I'll be getting through more of that. Let me go ahead and get a 35-minute timer. Let's see. See if I can find one that's really cute like that other one I had. There's an hour. There's a 30-minute. 30-minute. None of them are for 35, though. Okay. All right. So we'll pick a different type then. Let's do this one. Wait for the ad to go away. Come on. There we go. Okay. So, got our timer here for us. So we're going to do a 35-minute sprint. I will be reading Ninth House this sprint. And I think in the next sprint, like I won't do it this one, but the next sprint, I'm going to do my skincare routine to kind of like wind down for bed. So let's go ahead and get started. Happy reading, everybody. I'll see you in about 35 minutes. Okay, guys, that was 35 minutes. I got through about 18 pages of Ninth House. For those of you that have read it, I read the chapter where there's a flashback to Alex in the bathroom. If you know, you know. That was a little messed up. Just gonna say. Yikes. Yeah, that was a little messed up. Internet died halfway through the last sprint. Oh no! I'm glad you made it back. Loved Ninth House and have Hellbent sitting in my library pile. So I heard Ninth House was probably the best of the two, and Hellbent people weren't as happy with. I'm enjoying it so far. It's definitely something where I feel like my mom and my sister might struggle with it because it's a very slow build. My mom's been doing a lot of audiobook reading though, so I think the audiobook might be better for her. And my sister though is more of a physical reader, so that one might be harder for her. Yeah, it's a hard scene. It's a divisive scene. It's just it explains a lot. Let me just say. It explains a lot about Alex in particular. Anyway, so what are you guys reading? What are you working on today with our sprints? I think we might try to let's maybe do one more sprint. Mostly because I'm starting to get tired. I woke up at like 7 o'clock and then I went back to sleep, and the last like couple weeks I've taken a nap halfway through the day, and I have not taken a nap today, so I'm a little on the tired side. Some people hate Ninth House because of that scene. Oh, okay, I get that. Like, the graphic nature of it, like, I understand, like, some people probably wouldn't like that. Not to say I liked it in any way, but it helps, I think, to understand the level of which Alex struggles. If you know, you know. Yeah, that's a rough scene. That's a really, really rough scene to like read. But I'm glad that I got over it. I read it and then it's over with. But that's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. But okay, so let me know what you guys are working on today. And while I wait for that, I'm going to go ahead and roll for our very likely, probably last sprint. And it's a 14. So let's see. 12 would be 60, 70 minutes, I think, is what 14 would be. So we'll do a 70-minute sprint. That's just over an hour. I have no idea what to read, so I've just been watching YouTube, but I'm working on some crochet projects for my market in September. Nice. Awesome. I'm supposed to be reading The Fall That Saved Us. Supposed to be reading. I like how that word was thrown in there. Supposed to be. All right, so let's see what our last read for the night is going to be. And we are going to stick with Ninth House, it looks like. I'm not mad at that. So let me go ahead and get a timer for us. I will say that with Ninth House, I feel like it's one of those books where the more I read it, the more I enjoy it. Like when I first started it, I was not sure if I was going to like it very much, but I'm glad that I've stuck with it because I have been enjoying it more so than I expected. I think that, like I said, for like my sister and my mom who are not really used to like gothic things or like really, really dark things, this will probably, more so for my sister, be a book where like my sister might struggle with it more writing wise. My mom, who will probably listen to the audiobook, will have a better time with it. And that's just based off of knowing them. Yeah, but it's on social media instead. Yes, I am enjoying Ninth House. I think that it's not a 5-star yet, but I think really for this, the way it would be a 5-star for me is if I continue to like what's going on. Like, I can't say whether it's a 5-star or not right now because it's still too early for me to say, but I'm genuinely enjoying it. Like, it just took me like a couple chapters to really get into the way that it was being written. Like, the style is very different than what I remember the Shadow and Bone trilogy to be. And obviously that's because, for one, it's a different age group. This is a fully adult novel as opposed to like a young adult series. But even like the way that she writes, like the scenes where there's magic involved, is very different than how she would write scenes in Shadow and Bone. So that's been like a little bit of like something I had to wrap my head around, but I'm really liking it. Like, I'm liking it more than I think I anticipated, which is good. My TBR is Can't Spell a T Without Treason. I have that book. I just got that book not that long ago, before my book buying ban in the Paradise Problem. Well, considering that I currently have Can't Spell T Without Treason, I'm going to go with that one because I want to hear your thoughts on it. And I don't know who the Paradise Problem. Is that a Christina Lauren book? I feel like that's a Christina Lauren book because I know how you like Christina Lauren. We'll help Adri pick which book they want to read before we get started. I have a feeling that it's a Christina Lauren book, but I could be wrong. It is Christina Lauren. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Love Tea, so book 1 gets my vote. Well, and I don't have it in here. It's upstairs. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Can't Spell Tea Without Treason. Mostly because I have that book and I'm really excited for it and I want to hear what other people's thoughts are on it, because I've seen people like interested to read it, but no one has actually like read it and like given their thoughts on it. So I want to know. I want to know what your thoughts are on it, Adri. So we'll go with that one. All right, but we're going to do our last sprint here, a little over an hour, and I will see you guys in a little while. Happy reading. Okay, guys, that was the end of the sprint. I am so tired. Like, I did nothing except plan and prep for stuff for tomorrow and did some Amazon wish list organization, like cleaned out my Amazon wish list of things that either I didn't want anymore or that I don't need. Yeah, I am so tired. I am exhausted. You guys can probably tell. But so yeah, that was the end of the last sprint. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If I get the chance, I'll try to do more sprints as time goes on, but we're getting close to the end of the summer already, which is weird for me. Well, it's not quite the end of the summer. We've still got like a whole other month and a half, but still, like for me in particular, I'm getting close to like being able to get my stuff ready for school and stuff with my program. And so like it's getting kind of it's feeling down to the wire to me. Like it feels like everything's starting up like in 2 weeks and it's not. And so I'm like having to do all this prep and stuff. So we'll see if I end up doing more sprints or not. We'll kind of see. But yeah, so otherwise anything that's going on, I've got videos coming out this coming week. I've got my Q2 stats video as well as my Q2 unhaul coming out. I will be doing a video of a birthday haul kind of thing on my TikTok, so make sure to go check that out if you would like to see those videos. Plus, there's other little videos and stuff that come out on TikTok that I also make into YouTube Shorts. So you can, pay attention to my TikTok or my YouTube channel, and both of those places you'll see them more than likely. Otherwise, I do have a vacation coming up at the end of July that I will have to prep for in some case. Like you guys probably won't notice it, but I will be gone. And you'll see it in one of my vlogs for Black Aweenathon, which is really exciting. Made it through page 80. I can't spell T without treason. Ooh, okay. How do you like it so far? How are you liking it? Like, I heard it's more so like a cozy read of sorts, kind of like Legends and Lattes feels, but like more mystery thriller is what I'm believing to understand the synopsis correctly. But yeah, so I've got a lot of cool things going on coming up this month. And then in August, my husband goes on a vacation with his family. So I'm going to have a lot of days where I'm going to be by myself. So I'll probably be doing a lot of sprints with friends and otherwise because I'm going to need people to occupy me. It's good. Not quite as cozy as Legends and Lattes. Oh, okay. That's fine. Still, I'm intrigued to read it. So, but anyway, so yeah, that's about it. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Hope you guys had a good night of reading or whatever. And thank you to everybody that joined in for the Baptism of Fire and Tower of Swallows discussions. So like I said, this month we are working on The Lady of the Lake by Andrzej Sapkowski for the Witcher read-along. And the live show for that is going to be August 3rd, Saturday, August 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bit more gore than I expected from a cozy book, but still enjoying it. Ooh, okay. Well, gore can be cozy for some kinds of people, I guess we'll say. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight, and hope you guys have a great night and a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys in my videos when they come out next week. Bye!